So, we're gonna go ahead with Marcus Aurelius and him talking about things and quite an analysis of his thoughts and values and other important things. Well, yeah. Another important aspect of Marcus' philosophy is the idea, again derived directly from Epictetus, but of course part of the general Stoic view, that death is a natural phenomenon, not to be feared. Indeed, Marcus even directly endorses Epictetus' famous quote-unquote open door policy, i.e. the notion that suicide is admissible under certain circumstances. As Stevens puts it, Marcus repeats his open door policy of Epictetus when he writes, "If the smoke makes me cough, I can leave." Thus, like Epictetus, Marcus accepts the Stoic doctrine that suicide under extreme circumstances of suffering can be morally permissible, at least for the person who is making progress in virtue. Moreover, Marcus and Epictetus both derive consolidation from the fact that we are free to exercise our own judgment about what degree of suffering we will tolerate and what degree of suffering we need no longer endure. We have the power to decide when to exit the smoky house of life. The question is not whether we mortal beings will die. The question is when and how it is appropriate for us to exit life. Page 73 from, if I can remember correctly, it definitely is by Stevens. Well, I can't remember. Anyway, it is a book, Should I? Well, I'm actually having to tell you. It is Marcus Aurelius, A Guide for the Perplexed by William O. Stevens. Yeah. The third, fourth, and fifth chapter of the book then zoom into the details of Marcus' philosophy by focusing on three major recurring themes in the Meditations. Marcus' use of Mariology, i.e. the branch of metaphysics that is concerned with the identification of parts and their relationship to the whole. The interrelated notions of time, transience, and eternity, and the relationship between virtue and vice, and what Stephen calls quote-unquote junk. So there's no space here to treat any of this in depth, but let me give a flavor of how the author proceeds, keeping in mind that his goal is to show that Marcus, even though he is not a philosopher and he is writing for himself, nonetheless articulates a coherent and at times original philosophy of life. So Marcus' use of Mariology is what allows him to analyze the component parts of certain objects, reflect on their relations to the whole object, and draw philosophical conclusions pertinent to his view of life. For instance, in 7.23, he notes that the universe is made of a large number of individual objects, including all living beings like horses, trees, and human beings. All these objects contain the universal matter, and as he says, it does the container no harm to be put together and none to be taken apart. I'm willing to repeat, it does the container no harm to be put together and none to be taken apart. In other words, death is a kind of cosmic recycling to which the cosmos are indifferent. And there's a quote, "Every portion of me will be reassigned as another portion of the world, and that in turn transformed into another. Ad infinitum. I was produced through one such transformation, and my parents too, and so on back ad infinitum." Yeah. Mariology comes into play also when Marcus wants to remind himself that we as individual human beings are limbs of the social body, and that we therefore have to work together for the betterment of the whole body, i.e. the polis. And now again a quote, "We were born to work together like feet, hands, and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower. They obstruct each other is unnatural. To feel anger at someone, to turn your back on him, these are obstructions. To obstruct each other is unnatural because we have to work together. and feeling angry towards somebody and turning your back on somebody will definitely not benefit working together. The second theme, that of time, transience, and eternity, is explored by Marcus in order to quell his own fear of mortality, to achieve serenity of mind, and to develop a sense of equanimity toward people and events. Here, of course, is where we find his use of Heraclitus' metaphor of time as a flowing river. The idea is that once we fully appreciate the infinity of time, we realize how silly it is to get upset about the minutiae of our puny everyday life, regardless of how disproportionately large they may loom in our thoughts whenever we let go of the view from above. Another consequence of this perspective is that it exposes pride in one's accomplishments and especially seeking fame for the empty things they are. Everyone we know will soon be dead and forgotten, and so will we. What we do matters in the here and now because it is helpful to others, not because it will be remembered for a little bit longer by people who we will not know. The real gift is the present, over which we have control in the sense of controlling our judgments and actions. The past and the future are infinite, and we have no control over them. The third theme is that of virtue, vice, and junk. Here, according to Stevens, we see some of the more mature and sophisticated aspects of Marcus' philosophy. One manifestation of this is his analysis of the nature of things, aiming at discerning whether they are truly important or not. These are the bits in the meditations where we get the reminder that precious marble is nothing but hardened dirt, gold, and silver are just residues mined from the earth. The prestigious purple dye worn by the emperor is just the blood of a shellfish. So, these are the bits in the meditations where we get the reminder that precious marble is nothing but hardened dirt. One manifestation of this is his analysis of the nature of things, aiming at discerning whether they are truly important or not. A lot of things that we find important are not. With this strategy, Marcus shatters the rosy-colored lenses through which we prefer to view the things we so intensely desire. He insists on seeing these pleasures for what they really are. Page 133 of the book this article is about. As we know, the implication of this approach is not that external objects do not matter, but rather that they are merely preferred indifference, things that are not good in themselves and which certainly take a backseat when compared to the chief good, which is virtue. To pursue them for their own sake, therefore, becomes a vice. It is like going after junk rather than something of true value. Let me conclude by giving you just one of several examples in the book where Stevens goes through a particular section of the meditations and reconstructs the former structure of Marcus' argument. This is a useful exercise for two reasons. First, it allows us to examine the argument more carefully to see whether it is valid and sound. Second, and I think actually more importantly, it dispels the common notion that the meditation is written somewhat casually and that it is not a serious book of philosophy. It is, but since Marcus was writing to himself, not to an audience, we have to do the work necessary to appreciate his thinking. My preferred example is in the context Marcus' discussion in 8.17 of the idea that it is futile to lay blame regardless of what particular metaphysics view of the world, the Stoic, the Epicurean, or any other one, we happen to hold. Here is Stevens' reconstruction of the full argument. First, the matter is either in our control or in the control of someone else. Well, I would prefer saying the matter is either in our control or it is not. If it is in our control, then we can handle it appropriately without blaming others. If it is in the control of someone else, then we could blame other atoms. If the Epicureans are right about how the cosmos works, or the Logos, if the Stoics are right about how the cosmos works, or know one and nothing. It's stupid to blame atoms since they have no intentionality. Yeah. It's stupid to blame the Logos since the cosmos, which for the Stoics was a living organism, knows best what should happen. Hence, if it is the control of someone else, then blame no one and nothing. Therefore, blaming is pointless. QED, whatever this stands for, but I'm gonna end the episode here. I wish you the best. See you soon.